So welcome. This is the November 21st meeting at 2024. It is 6:30. Thank you for coming. So we will start with the housing production plan presentation. And Jan, if you would like to come up and introduce yourself, please.
So I'm Jan Ackerman, and I'm from the Affordable Housing Trust.
Welcome.
And we have been working on the housing production plan for about a year and a half, and have gone through quite a series of steps in developing that housing production plan, many of which include a lot of community interactions so that we got views of the community. So just to run through very quickly what the steps are that we've gone through to develop this plan. We had a community housing workshop in July of 2023, where we had about 31 people for a couple of hours and go through kind of the information on what the needs assessment was and get their feedback about what they thought was needed. We also, in the summer of 2023, did a housing survey, community housing survey, where we had 77 responses. And all of those are out, the responses are summarized in the back of the housing production, which is available on the town website. And I think I sent the latest version to each of the members of the select board back in the end of September. We also had a community forum in March of 2024 to present the first draft of the housing production plan. And at that meeting, we also got feedback from the community on what was in. We had planning board, we met with the planning board and had discussions on April 16th, 2023, on July 2nd, 2024. And the planning board approved the housing production plan on September 17th, 2024. We have met before with the select board on this. We got a number of comments from you at that time, and that was in April of 2024, and then we're here tonight. So the components of the housing production plan are, first of all, a housing needs assessment. We hired a consultant to work with us who has done many of these for other towns. Her name is Karen Sunderberg, and she did the analysis for the housing needs assessment, which is a whole first section of the housing production plan. Just to do a couple of highlights, that identifies that there are 1,638 homes in Stockbridge, that over the past decade, that number has increased by only 3%. So it's a very slow growth in the expansion of housing options in town. About 50% of that is second homeowners or seasonal homeowners. And the affordability gaps are higher now than they were 10 years ago, meaning that a lot of the houses, I think we've talked about this before, the median price was a year or so ago was $575 on the market for a single family house. And it's probably higher than that now.
I think it's actually recently I think it's extremely high. I mean, it's around 850 now.
Okay.
Saw Selena Birch just did a study.
Yeah. And what that means when I'm talking about the affordability gap, we also looked at the community, what's happening in the community. And we know that the median age of residents is now 60, up from about 41 in 2010. The median household income is $46,500 in 2021, down from $55,100 in 2010. And I will just mention also in this on the affordable housing definition of, if you were to look at trying to identify affordable housing units for affordability, that is the two-person 80% of area median income household would be 5 in 2021. So it was 40% higher than the Stockbridge median household income. The other things that that are components of the housing production plan are to identify the priority housing needs. And this comes in part from the community interactions that we had, but also from the data coming out of the first two, the housing needs assessment. And it indicated a need for both rental and home ownership units and a need for home improvement resources, because 45% of the homes in Stockbridge were built before World War II. And we know that there are probably, and we know that 21% of residents in Stockbridge indicated that they have a disability of some sort. So what we're talking about with these are renovations that would make it more energy efficient in some cases, would make accessibility better for some people in homes. Another element of the housing production plan are the housing production goals. And this, under the state requirements, we would need to set as an objective to try to identify about 5 units per year, either rental or home ownership. So that's about 25 over the next 5 years. That's a goal, an objective. It's not a concrete plan. There is no kind of individual plan right now to identify where those would be or even how many there would be. Lastly, we identified housing strategies, and those are in really 3 different categories. One is capacity building, which is getting more community outreach and to find ways to capitalize the trust so that there's funding to do either the renovation needs and so on, or to look at units. And we had a conversation at the trust meeting earlier today about possibility of one property on Pine Street that might be a possibility for conversion into affordable housing. The second category of housing strategies was in zoning, and we got quite a bit of feedback from the planning board on that. It calls for creating and addressing the ADU issue, which it largely has been done by the state. But we will probably want to be doing some adjustments to that in town. And then the last category of the strategies is development. And we've identified there to partner with some developers on privately owned property. We don't have those identified right now, what those would be. Review the public property that's owned. And in this case, that might include if the firehouses that exist right now are not needed anymore, given the new EMS and fire plans, we might be able to evaluate those for whether they might be affordable housing. And housing preservation initiatives. I think there is a grant right now that has come in so that we would be able to have people apply to do housing renovations on that. So lastly, I want to just point out the notable changes since the last draft. I sent out to you at the end of September, along with the final draft, a 2-page list of all of the changes that were made to the housing production plan since the first draft as a result of the conversations with the planning board and the select board. But I'll just highlight 1 or 2 right now. One, we added some wording to emphasize that we want to have creating housing that is harmonious with the small town character of Stockbridge. We added a zoning strategy to address short-term rentals' impact on the housing stock. We added a review of, as I said, of the fire stations and other town properties. And I want to point out that the friendly 40B process does, if we were to develop something on that process, it does call for the select board and the developer down the road to jointly agree on what the plan would be for that property and to jointly present it to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities in Boston. And then that group would then forward it approval to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the select board would have quite a bit of say and input into any of those kind of proposals going forward. So that's a quick summary. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the draft.
Katie,
Can I ask a question? When you talk about the development of Pine Street, is that more housing at Heaton Court?
No, not at this
It
point.
could be.
It could be, might
That's-
be.
Oh,
It's very early in it. We just had the discussion an hour and a half ago, so
okay.
to start.
14 Pine Street.
So
It's the building at 14 Pine Street.
Oh, okay.
that the Waldorf School is.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Jeff,
Yeah, so what's the, you say affordable housing, what's the price for affordable housing in Stockton? What are we looking at?
Well-
Because I know that it's not cheap in other towns, that what they're saying affordable housing is. What's the percentage of the price on a unit that you,
Well, I can tell you, since we don't have any specific project in mind at the moment, but I can tell you that here are a couple of figures from this. As I said, the affordable housing would target people who have 80% of the area median income. And it would be affordable to them, whether it's a rental or a home ownership. And so for a two-person family, that would, sorry, for a two-family house with affordable, I'll make this simple. So for a single-family home, a home ownership at that rate would be about 285,000. And for rental would be about 1,450.
So the median income.
That's
For 80%.
80% of the area median income.
so a family needs the house they can afford to be 285,000, which,
For a single family
yeah,
house.
and to rent is 1,450.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it were a two-family house that they bought, because you could then rent out the other part of it, that would allow them to buy up to 437,000 for a two-family house.
I think
It's just, that's kind of a number
still-
that in Stockbridge is nowhere around.
I know, that's why
anywhere.
Anyway,
we're looking at
Yeah.
being able to do that. And I would just say,
how do you do that? I mean, how do you get to that point where somebody can buy a house for 285,000?
well, you would have to have some substance going into the construction of it, for sure.
I made,
Wait,
Can I, or
Chuck, let Chuck finish.
I thought it was,
I'd like to address that
Bill?
first.
Yeah,
Can,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, an answer, yes.
I think that there's a couple of points. First, we haven't even mentioned, the Community Development Block Grant Initiative, which is basically a state program to subsidize current existing homeowners' house repairs. We're also part of a $19 million grant that Berkshire Regional Planning put in that was only available to just as 40 communities that they have submitted. It's a EPA Community Change Block Grant. Similarly, it is only targeted toward existing home repairs for income qualified homeowners. So we're trying to deal with the folks who already live here in a big, huge way.
But Patrick, I
Let me-
don't
let
think
me-
that was the question.
I know,
That's
I know,
correct.
but I just want to kind of, that wasn't mentioned.
Yeah.
So when you think about how you get to home ownership, affordable home ownership, let's say, for example, 80% AMI is one of these EMS guys we're going to hire, women, guys, men, whatever. All right, let's say that person makes 55 grand a year, which is right around 80% AMI. All right. Now, I'm not going to name names, but someone we all know just put a modular house in for about 350, including the utilities, didn't include the land. So you add 50 grand for the land, and that is 400 grand. Now that family could afford 300 grand, then you come up with $100,000 subsidy, which is why, frankly, I wrote the residential inclusionary bylaw. We're trying to have funding sources that are not the taxpayers that would help us accomplish goals, whether it's creating rental units like we looked at Pine Street today, or creating home ownership opportunities via something like the residential inclusionary bylaw. And we've been working on these strategies for 4 years now. This is the whole, how all that ties together. And it's actually not so big a gap to close because we're not looking to buy the $800,000 existing home. We're looking to build something on an acre or two, which frankly is why one of the reasons we're going to have to evaluate whether or not to do the affordable homes, seasonal community designation. That allows us to build on smaller lots, which could be a significant reduction in cost and allow us to target those lots at some full-time residential housing.
I think on rental units too, we could probably, if in those, we'd work with a developer who is used to developing those kinds of rental properties. And a lot of their funding comes from tax credits. So that would be one of the ways that they would be able to fund it and keep the rents at that level.
And as soon as we tap into any state or federal funded money, then that opens those places to anybody.
That's not true.
I'm
And in fact, we
I'm
can,
just up, it isn't?
it isn't true. And in fact, we can adopt that municipal preference, which goes above all other preferences through that new seasonal communities designation. We can actually say,
That has to go to town
I
meeting, so don't
understand
count your chickens before they're hatched.
and can I finish my sentence, Jamie?
Of course you
All
can,
right,
Patrick.
I understand things have to get approved, but we do have ways to preference. Look, we start with what our goals are. Our goals are to keep the teachers and the firefighters and the police
Right.
and all
That's
the
why-
other municipal workers in this
That's
community.
why I'm asking, if we use federal funding, does that open the door to
Well,
everybody? And
I mean, so far, we haven't talked about any federal funding for this stuff, but the fact is that we have a path to accomplish our goals here. And whether or not there's the will of the voters at town meeting to adopt that path. But to me, it's crazy that if we have a way to keep the kinds of workers that are essential in our community, that we want to avail ourselves of that.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just,
Yeah.
like we're right here, as soon as you tap into state or federal money,
Yeah.
that
How many,
opens the door to.
I'm not going to name
not
names, but
residents.
there's a whole lot of people who live at Heaton Court and at Pine Woods who are members of the local community. What Eileen Peltier told me, who is the head of Berkshire Housing, now, whatever they renamed it to, is that people kind of point to that as a bit of a chestnut, because in fact, 98% of the applicants we get in these local housing developments are locals. And in fact, you can see the reality of that, because I could give you names. I'm not going to list people who live on our affordable housing, but I could give you names of community members who now live there and who are long-term residents there who grew up in Stockbridge. It's not like the 53 units at Heaton Court and the units at Riverbrook and the units at Pine Woods are all outsiders who moved from across the country to move there. We get very little of that. And in fact, I think Andrea and Construct have done a good job of accommodating locals as slots open up. And privately, I can give you some names of people who want to check on that.
It's just,
But I think another point is that we don't have, your point about trying to have it be available to people who would reside in Stockbridge and work in Stockbridge or whatever, as opposed to people from wherever. I think we'd align with that, but we don't have a specific project in mind right now. So it's hard to say, well, this is where the funding would come from to do that, to make sure that, we keep it in that realm. But as I said, I think all the projects, as they would go forward, would have some select board involvement. So
that's what that's too. So as you develop a project, who ends up with the final say? Does it go through your committee, through the select board, and then the ZBA?
If it's a friendly 40B, it would go through our board, then it would go through the select board, and together the application into the state entity for approval. And from there, it gets approval to go to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. And if it's not a 40B, it's,
There is. I mean, that's the only path to build is through the states. There's no affordable housing that's not 40B.
okay, even that
Yeah.
apartment house would be a 40B too.
No, but that's existing zoning. That's existing residential building. There's no permitting required there. It's basically a by right.
Okay,
That has to do with how we finance it, but not whether or not it gets approved. It's already zoned for commercial, residential, and industrial even, I think. It used to have a buggy factory there. I mean, it's crazy. It's like one of those few properties in town you can do anything you want to.
okay.
Yeah.
And that would just be approval through,
Yeah, it'd be basically like there's 2 floors are available, and maybe there's 5 to 8 units you could build out in them. You know, if the landlord wanted to make a market, then it doesn't sort of help the locals. And if we subsidize them a little bit, then they get de-restricted. That's a pretty straightforward one. Yeah.
okay, I know there's a lot to it. It's a big document.
It's aspirational. It doesn't tie the town to any policies. Even the goal of 5 units a year is aspirational. We're not required. This is basically saying, the town voted the trust into existence. Towns voted on a number of these types of things lately and have all overwhelmingly approved them. And this is basically an aspirational document that, by the way, this board funded with this wasn't paid for by the trust money that came out of CPC. This was paid for with ARPA money that we funded. The 3 of us funded. I think it was Jamie. I think that it was the 3 of us. It was my. Yeah.
Okay. What was the vote from the planning board?
I'm sorry?
It was when the planning board
5 to
voted on
1.
it, what was that
It
vote?
was 5 to 1.
5 to
Wayne
1.
voted against it.
There was one abstention. I think.
Okay, well, I guess I'm not set for right now.
Okay.
Can any of us ask any questions?
Of course.
Is that after?
Yeah, come up and state your name.
We can do it.
Just,
Yeah.
yeah, come up or say your name in here.
Peter Borinsky Jr., 7A Glendale Middle Road. I agree. I like the housing plan. I think it's good the way it's written. I think the only thing that I'm wondering, and I thought the planning board would put some guide rails on some of the freedom of spending or how monies would be spent. And I'm just wondering if the select board has thought about how they could put something in there to guarantee that monies that were going to be taken from the CBC or the CPA money, or if it turns into any town tax dollars, that you would have some input in how that was being spent. I get a little nervous, maybe it's just my character, that if we just leave the door wide open, each year, even if this board can justify their budget, it may be asking for more, or obligate to monies that are spread out over multiple years that then we would have to give them in order for them to balance their budget or fundraising or whatever it would be. So I guess I'm just asking for the board to think about if there's any type of guide rails or any type of, not restrictions, because I don't think we should tie any board's hands, but I think we should definitely have it presented and discussion and talked about so that it's just not all in one boat. I don't know if I said that correctly, but I think everybody got my point. But I do agree with it. I think, there is a need for it. Stockbridge has changed over the years, so, we have to have a plan. Master plan, housing plan. I just want to be careful that we do it responsibly, both financially and locations.
Okay, do we,
Any other questions?
would Mike have an answer on that?
I actually just,
Do you have an answer on that, Mike, about any control over the spending?
The control over the spending would come, if it was town funds, it would have to be approved at town, by the select board, then by town meeting.
Okay,
And if they were to seek other funds from state or federal sources, that would be up to them. They are an independent trust. It's not, it wouldn't go
Yeah.
back on the town itself. But they couldn't spend money that wasn't appropriated in some way, whether through a grant, through approval at town meeting.
okay.
Peter, you have a question?
Well, when you sit down, some of you jump back into your brain. Where I was going with that, and I apologize for having you back up, is, I don't know if it was the last affordable housing meeting, not today's, but the one before, where there was discussion of hiring or not appointing, because I think it was paid positions, but I don't know if that's been decided yet, for like grant writers or managers or project managers. And I just want to make sure that if we have a need for that, that we've exhausted all of our resources that the town has to offer. Because I know we have grant writers in town and project managers and stuff. And I just want to make sure that we're not building another whole division and just spending our money responsibly. That's what it comes down to. Thank you.
Sure.
So I appreciate your comments. I think that it's, I can probably speak for the whole trust that we're very much conscious of what you just said and are doing things that are responsible for the town and not going off on some tangent. So I want to reassure you, and I think that that I can say that on behalf of the whole trust.
And I would just like to add that.
Wait,
What?
I get to call on who speaks.
You get to?
Yeah, I'm the chair.
Okay, Jamie, can I just have permission to speak?
Yes, you
Oh,
may.
thank you. The other thing I'd like to add to that, Peter, is in terms of the amount of money that we have raised from residential property taxes in the 5 years I've been on this board, have averaged 0.4% a year. And it didn't happen by accident. That is because this is as a board and with Michael Canales, we worked very hard to watch every single dollar in taxpayer spend, and we have outperformed every town in Berkshire County with the amount of money we've actually raised from residential property taxes. And if you think that culture is changing in any board that spends the taxpayers' money, I guarantee you it won't. We're frugal by design.
No, I just,
Yep.
just getting it out there.
Yep.
Sure.
thanks. So I'm Michaela Donovan. I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust. I live full-time with my kids and my husband in Stockbridge. And I guess sometimes I think what I've been observing with the work we've been doing here, and also I'm a consultant for CDC of South Berkshire as well in affordable housing and workforce housing. And sometimes I feel like it's easy to get in the weeds of all of this stuff, and I guess and this is more of just a question, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on, so just like if we don't pursue this, which is difficult and nuanced and lengthy, and no one in the country really has an answer to this yet, we're all kind of just figuring it out as we're going. I guess my question is, what does Stockbridge look like if we don't aggressively pursue a reasonable housing plan? That's what I wonder. And I think if we don't, to me, it feels like it just becomes 2/3 second homeowner. It becomes more properties that are being bought by wealthy people from different cities, which honestly, I get it, but I worry about that, and I think it's been interesting. It's an emotional thing. Housing is emotional, and it hits people in different ways. And But I just want to like zoom out and just remind us of that because I think it's going to be very challenging and more stark than it is if there isn't support for some kind of reasonable attack at this as a community. So I don't know if I have a question. I just wanted to like say that, for us to kind of keep that in mind.
Thank you, Mikkel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark.
Mark Mills, 15 Cherry Street, a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. Just want to say that I was struck by some of the things in this housing production plan. That if you, I got my house here in 2002, moved in here full-time in 2014. And I think there are a number of people who maybe were second homeowners and gradually transfer over to become full-time residents. And some of the data that's in this housing production plan was very striking to me. Because if you look at the town physically, it hasn't changed very much in the 20 years that I've been here, 22 years, whatever it is. We've strictly maintained kind of the physical appearance of the town, while the nature of the population has changed radically. The people who are here it's a very different mix of people than it was 20 years ago. The town is older, it's richer, there's more second homeowners. There are people struggling at the lower end. They may be older people, tough on their incomes, keeping up their properties is difficult. The nature of the town in terms of its population is very different, and it gets pointed out in this document. And it was the most striking thing to me was evidence of how much things have changed. And it pointed out how many people are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. That's a threshold above which the housing experts think you're struggling. There's a percentage of people that's pretty substantial paying 50% of their income in order to have their housing. In recent years, we've had people's incomes going up maybe a little bit flat, and the cost of housing has been doing this. If you graph them, it's like, it can't last. We've reached this point where the housing is just getting out of reach. The term affordable housing has become an oxymoron. There is no affordable housing unless we intervene and make it. The marketplace is not giving anybody affordable housing. You have to bend the marketplace to your will to get some housing created. And it can be done in a lot of different ways. It can be rental, it can be ownership. Subsidies are required. There's no doubt about it. If you look at the chart of the incomes that people can have and their affordability, and Chuck, you gave the example of somebody can afford a $285,000 house based on their income or their and the thing costs $425,000. I mean, that gap has to be plugged somehow. It has to be filled. Habitat for Humanity will fix up a house. They might get a house in the community and then go in there and fix it up. And maybe it's worth $400,000, and the person household that can go in there can afford $250,000. That other gap has to be covered somehow. And then when there's a subsidy thrown at it, all kinds of attachments to that property are put in there with it, so the person can't flip the house and walk off with a pile of money. But in any case, I'm just saying that the town has changed dramatically, even though you wouldn't know it if you drive down Main Street. And we have to take some steps to preserve some of the character of the town for the people, the workforce housing and people with lower incomes.
Mhm.
And our bag of tricks will have to be many, but we can see a dramatic need unless we're just going to become just a bunch of old people, rich people, second homeowners, and the strugglers gradually will drift off or die or whatever. And we become what I think is like a fake town. I mean, I think to preserve the town as a real place, we need to get people of modest means and middle incomes and local workers into the town to keep a real community. Otherwise, I don't know who's going to be sitting at these tables of all these meetings that we have 10 or 15 years from now. We got to bring in a new group of people who are in their 30s and 40s, and they will become the town fathers in the years ahead. If we don't do that, I don't know what we're going to have.
Yeah, can I speak?
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
And then Patty's been waiting too.
I agree with you 100%. I would kind of like to see more smaller things around town. 2 units here, 4 units there that fit the town.
Mhm.
But we also got to address why we don't have the younger people. It's not just the housing. It's jobs, it's wages. It's how do we get higher paying jobs in the area, not to be in Stockbridge, but in the area. We don't have the draw to keep the younger people here. You don't have the nightlife and 10 o'clock, everything's locked up. You know, that's what, so it's a complicated, this is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But there's other reasons why we don't have the younger people staying in town. And we really got to open up that door and look at everything. And how can we, you know, do this? I mean, the years, I mean, I lived in Stockbridge, but I don't know, like a couple of years in Lee when I got married, but then we're back. And, you know, the young population's gone. The kids are, our schools are down to nothing. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's a bigger issue than just the housing. So the housing is a big part of it, but, you know, if we don't have to draw to attract the younger people, then the housing is, you can do all you want with the housing, we're not going to attract them.
Patty, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't actually come here to speak tonight, but some of the things I've heard have made me realize that I just sort of have to. I agree with everything Chuck has just said. I think it's really important to take this contextually, that it's not just about the housing, that you need economic development hand in hand with the housing, or you won't get people to stay. But I think there's a couple other issues too that I think are important to take into account, only because I think that demographic data is really, it shouldn't be used as a scare tactic. So I want to straighten out one piece of fact. I can't guarantee what will happen to Stockbridge in the future. It will become 2/3 part-time residents. It sounds incredibly scary, doesn't it? But Stockbridge has historically maintained almost a 50% balance, plus or minus 50%. And the trends have been going somewhat down since the COVID influx and the work from home transition and people going from part-time residents to full-time residents. So I just would appreciate it if we didn't sort of like try to like pretend we know what's going to happen in the future. I don't think that Stockbridge is going to become 2/3 part-time residents any more than anyone else knows for a fact. And secondly, as far as attracting young families, obviously we need to make housing opportunities that attract more families. But I think we also have to accept the fact that the demographic trends are skewing downward in children. I mean, that's a global phenomenon. It's not even a United States phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. So I think that we should just, I mean, unless we're going to pay people to have babies, we just have to be careful with the kind of pairing necessarily this. I think we should have more affordable housing. I'm not against the housing plan. I'm not against any of this, but I am I'm concerned that at the meetings when we have these red flag warnings, we're going to become 2/3 part-time residents. We're going to be an old town and we're just going to die off. We have to recognize that we're operating within a context that's countrywide, that's global, and it's not just about the housing. So I would echo a lot of what Chuck said. If you want to attract the young families, it's not just about making the housing affordable. You have to have economic opportunities. You have to have better jobs to get younger people to stay, in addition to like housing the people we already want to stay, the EMS workers and the teachers. So I would just caution the board and people who want to speak about this important issue to not sort of like use demographic data as a way to like scare people, because you know that anything that's said at this meeting is going to end up quoted somewhere in some blog as if it was like data, like 2/3 of the town will be part-time residents. So let's sort of deal with this in context and make opportunities for people who want to live here.
Can I just respond?
Thank you, Patty. Did I say, I'd just like to be recognized as the chair, and I'd like to have like just everyone to breathe. Yes, you may speak, but just,
Not coming true.
Oh, okay. Patty, I appreciate that, and Patty's my neighbor in Mackinac Heights. And always well-researched, which I always appreciate about Patty. And I'm not trying to throw out numbers that don't exist. I'm only speaking from my own personal experience because I used to work in Nantucket. I worked there for 6 years. I lived there for months at a time in the summers, and that is what happened in Nantucket. So I'm just basing it on that experience. I know we're a different place and I'm not trying to put numbers to it, but I also do want to say I'm 100% in agreement. It's a holistic approach with economic development and things like that. But I have to say, like, as a younger person in town, I do see a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to like, the restaurants close at 10. Well, the restaurants close at 10 because the boards don't want noise and the neighbors don't want noise. And, Tanglewood has to come here and basically beg nervously to extend for a wedding for an hour. You know what I mean? So the people don't want to be here because there's too many rules and there's not enough like openness to being like, yeah, let's have a restaurant. Let's have a bar downtown that stays open. Like that, there isn't the flexibility for that in the thinking of the people who are making decisions. And so part of that is why when my friends and I go to the Harvest Festival and then we say, hey, let's go get lunch. Where do you want to go get lunch? And we say, well, do you want to go to Stockbridge? And they're like, there isn't anywhere in Stockbridge I want to go. So we go to Great Barrington and we spend our money there, And so I just feel like it's sometimes like people are playing too much politics and trying to be diplomatic around it. And like, sometimes it's like, yeah, there isn't the openness for it sometimes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask a question, have a comment? Katie?
Hi, Katie Sweet. Totally in favor of younger families coming in and making it affordable. One of my positions for the town is the COA director, so I think young kids and my job is seniors. I haven't read any of the plans, so I'm kind of out of the loop on a lot of things. And you said that there wasn't anything specific that you had in mind for buildings and projects. How would someone like me who knows the struggle of people on Social Security and fixed incomes, how would they be able to get recognized in some of these developmental plans? Like, I'll say Heaton Court, because that's something I'm familiar with. Because seniors are a huge part of what makes the town and the population, but totally in favor for younger people coming in. But I struggle on a day-to-day at work with people saying they don't know if they can take care of their houses, if they can afford, if something happens, rent increases, because a lot of people are on fixed incomes. So I didn't know how someone like me can argue for a certain project to be looked into, if that makes sense.
Can I comment on Heaton Court?
And
Can I
Dan,
comment
do you
on
want-
Heaton Court? Or no?
Okay.
I mean, I've been,
Go first.
I approached Heaton Court about a year ago to talk about expanding on that campus and adding 10 to 15 units, proposed a mixed use. So it wouldn't be just the folks who are income qualified, but it could be like market units also for just people who need to downsize. Their board has approved the conceptual plan to do that and have invited a couple of us in next, at the week after Thanksgiving to address trying to add up on that campus a little bit more affordable and mixed use housing. So not affordable and regular market housing for seniors in this town. I don't think it's an either or between families and seniors. I think we've got to look at all of our opportunities and evaluate each one as they come along.
Jen?
I would kind of echo that in part, and just in terms of seniors having input into this, throughout this process of developing the plan, the community workshop, the community forum, there were a number of seniors who were in those, who attended those, who answered in the survey. So I think we have a fair fairly good input on that general plan coming from seniors. And as for specific plans, which I mentioned, we don't have right now a concrete specific plan, but I think we would want, we have, I think, already a history in just exploring some of the possibilities of encouraging input from the community. And so part of the answer to your question, I think, is if we were looking at a project, and it might be the one we just talked about earlier today on Pine Street, you know, there will be some discussion of that, and it'll be on the agenda, and we can be notifying people, and you could be notifying people about things that would be coming up so that they have input.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Would the board like to vote to approve? Do we have any-
Discuss amongst ourselves before we do.
Would you like to have a discussion?
Yeah, I'll be open to discussion.
Patrick?
45 years ago, Jay Ryan's dad proposed Heaton Court to some opposition. There used to be a old hotel there, all right? It was our first affordable housing project. 25 years ago, or so 20 years ago, they proposed, the select board and leaders in town adopted CPC and proposed Pine Woods, all right? Since we adopted community preservation, we've had approximately 40 votes at town meeting to support Pine Woods and Heaton Court with town CPC funds. Every one of those have passed. 3 years ago, Jay Bukowski and I proposed an affordable housing trust. It passed 10-1. 2 years ago, I proposed the residential inclusionary bylaw to help fund affordable housing. It passed at town meeting 10-1. Okay? And I give credit not to whether it's a Republican or Democrat. In fact, it was Jim Balfans and Nick Nadorf who put on our radar 2 or 3 years ago at town meeting that we hadn't honored our commitment to make safe sidewalks at Pine Woods. And that was something that Michael and his team got done based on encouragement from this board. And I would just point out that our job here is we funded this plan. And if we want to change the plan, we should talk about it. But we have a long 40-year history of every single vote, 100% of the votes have been the good people of Stockbridge saying that they support this being a well-rounded community for everyone. And our job is to implement the will of the voters, not to debate over whether we think the will of the voters should be different. Thank you.
Chuck, anything?
No, I was, any meetings are 4.
At 4, yeah,
Any chance some meetings you have later so people can attend?
we can.
I think 4 is very hard for working people to attend.
Okay.
Just consider maybe moving to a later time in the evening.
Okay. I will definitely take that to
Just-
the trust and see if we can
Yeah,
make
it's,
that happen.
you know, it's very hard for any working person to make up 4 o'clock meeting. And I think you might get more attendees and more input. Just an observation. Yeah, I was on the fence on how to go with this. But discussing tonight and stuff and knowing that anything under the 40B and stuff comes before this board and then goes to the state, then goes to the ZBA. So it isn't just your committee making the final decision. Put my mind more at ease.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I was on the fence on this.
I know, I heard you.
All right.
I mean, it's just a lot of read, a lot of repetitive, a lot of, and it's for,
And we don't have mobile homes.
You will
I know.
know that they put that note in.
and Stockbridge is a unique town and it's hard because the way we're laid out, it's hard because of our zoning, it's hard because of a lot of things. But that's why we are where we are. So to balance it is very hard. And like Patrick said, over all the years, we've been trying to. previous select boards, previous committees to keep the town the way it should be, but times change and sometimes you just can't stop change. And fight it all you want. Sometimes it just happens. So, yeah, we're moving forward but like I said, I would like to see where possible, 2 to 4 unit places and stuff that I think fits the town a lot better. My opinion, I'm just passing it along. That's nothing to do with the ball or anything. Just keep that in mind. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee appointments. So a while back, there was some resignations and now there's openings. And so I would like to reappoint Lori Richmond and Philip Cedar. So Lori would have voting and Philip Cedar would not. He is a resident on Birch Lane in Beechwood. That would complete the committee. Were both announced here and at the
Second.
meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So thank you for willing to do service and we look forward to seeing you both at meetings. The Regional Transportation Advisory Committee appointment. So that is a committee from Great Barrington that it's called RTAC and it's a long-standing committee, so they had to change it. It's that sort of annual appointment, except the chair, who is Tate Pullman, is leaving. So they had to restart the committee. So in restarting the committee, we have to reappoint the Stockbridge representative, which is me. And so we just have to go through this formal thing to do that.
I nominate Jamie Manassi to be our rep.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
By the way, you guys have done a lot of really great work and you should come and put it on your agenda and come and tell us about it. Because I think a lot of the people in town don't always know about all the really cool transportation options you guys have done. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
So on conservation, there is an opening. So we have to announce it at select board and then we can fill it at our next meeting. So there isn't a COA opening announcement. So that's the Council on Aging. And there's an opening also on their board. So if you are interested, please send a letter of interest do we do it to Michael Canales or to Katie?
No, you do that to either Michael or
The select
Teresa.
board.
Okay, so to Teresa or Michael in the town offices,
For what?
Both-
the
both.
COA
Either
board
one.
opening.
Okay, but they all get, if they send it to the select board at stockbridgema.gov, they both get that.
Yeah.
So that way all 5 of us get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Community Preservation Funds Selectmen Projects, and I'm kind of not sure what this is. So either maybe Michael?
I have a few too.
Yes, so these are what if any projects the town, the select board would like to propose to the CPC committee. The applications are due the week after
December 2nd.
Thanksgiving, so I just need direction from you guys as to which projects you would like to move forward.
Okay,
Okay.
Patrick, you had an idea?
A couple. One, I would love to hear from Katie what her plan, if there's any plans coming out of Parks and Rec for CPC funds, if informally, if anyone from Parks and Rec wants to work with me, I would love for us to empower. I'm happy to help write the grant. These are 1 or 2 pages, so they're not that hard. But, do you have any projects on Parks and Rec that you guys are planning to apply for CPC funds for? 'Cause this is your one shot.
Yeah, so we haven't had a meeting in a little bit now that we haven't discussed any of that. I was told if I'm looking into a project on my own to present to the board. I was told that I could apply for the funds and then present it to the board, and if the board denies it, I can pull out the application. Is that correct?
Well, December 2nd is the deadline to apply for CPC
Yeah,
funds,
I
so there's not a lot of
have the plan
time.
written and I have letters of encouragement, so I've been working on it, but
And my question would be, do you want to have whatever that proposal is go through, get endorsed by this board? Because that way, if your board can't meet before the 2nd, there's still time to submit it
absolutely,
as a selectman project.
that would be fantastic.
Okay.
I can work with you, Patrick.
Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I can't get it.
Yeah.
Patty, did you have a question?
Wait. Okay, well, okay. I'm sorry. Do you want to?
My question is actually about the appointment. So I don't mean to circle back. I raised my hand appropriately, so. is it
That's okay. I didn't
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
it.
we can see it. That's fine.
Okay. Could you guys clarify for me what the process is when there are open board seats, the actual requirements of the posting and the process for, I would just be interested. It's come up recently. I followed one of the appointment openings recently, and so I wanted to know what the actual rules are.
So we'd like, generally, the way it happens is we announce it at select board. It's also to be announced at whatever committee has an opening. And then people can write a letter of interest to the selectman and to the town manager. And then it comes back to select board and we appoint or the person or people.
And it's always posted. I know Teresa's really good about posting it on the website. But, so is there a responsibility from either the board that has the opening or for the select board to make sure that she's in the loop so that it gets posted?
That's a question for Michael, really.
Yeah, she
That's a
gets,
question for Michael.
yeah, and she does all the minutes, so she gets all
I
that.
can't hear you, Michael.
We can't hear you, Michael.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Once it's announced by the select board, then we post it. So, Teresa will probably watch this Monday and it'll get posted.
Okay, and this, sorry, I have board questions. I apologize if I don't want to take too much time. But and this might be a Michael question also. Is there like an actual responsibility of the boards to post their minutes within some approved minutes? Obviously, they have to be approved.
This isn't the agenda. Who's the agenda?
Oh, okay.
Is it a quick answer, Michael?
Yeah, just shoot me an email. I'll respond, Patty. At their next meeting, they should be approving their previous minutes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't realize the agenda thing. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. Let's circle back. Patrick, did you have?
Yeah, so the first thing was Katie, question on that. The second is I recognize that it's Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And there's two parks in front of the Congregational Church and the Old Town Hall that are owned by the town.
Yeah.
And one of the things there that we are lacking is a Revolutionary War monument in town. And Michael and I did meet with a landscape architect the other day at no expense to the town to get some ideas. But I think that the second thing and the Stockbridge Mohican Commission, because it was a Mohican regiment and a settler regiment back then, it's sort of part unique story to history to Stockbridge. I would like us to take a look at that park and evaluate, because the 250th anniversary of the United States of America is coming up in a year. And if we don't fund this with this round, we're not going to be able to do the work in time for the 2026 250th anniversary. So I think as the second project it would be great if you and or me, between us and the Memorial Day Committee and the Mohican Commission, if we could kind of brainstorm and look at proposals to try to get something in around the Revolutionary War monument with the other ones. We've got the World War I, World War II, Korean War. We just don't have in town a Revolutionary War one.
Am I allowed to do that on my own, acting as a member of the Parks and Rec, or do I need
Yes.
approval from the Parks and Rec to go forward with this?
I have no idea. I just know we have a December 2nd deadline and I'm going to put something in. I just would love to have somebody. And if one of the other members wants to work with us on it, it just has to only be one.
Yeah, if it's legal. I
Someone
don't
Harold
know.
was working on?
What?
There's someone Harold was working on?
It is a little bit, but then it got expanded into there was a Mohican regiment and now like, the tribe wants to do something in conjunction with the town and make sure everybody, there were like a lot of soldiers because
Yeah,
the
but this
Stockbridge
but this was
Regiment,
Harold's project.
yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
same thing.
the one that hasn't gotten done yet.
Yeah,
Would this come out of the Parks and Rec?
No,
thing where
no,
I already need that? Oh,
no.
it's CPC.
CPC.
or
free
we
cash.
can come up with money
Yeah,
for that.
so
Yeah.
I'm allowed to work on the grant writing with Patrick on this without the Parks and Rec boards.
I can reach out to any of them, I
No,
think.
you can't. No, Patrick,
No.
that's a violation. You can't reach out to them. Katie, what you can do is you can write any of them, put them forward, but before the CPC committee votes, the Park and Rec should vote to support them. So,
Okay,
prior to them meeting to decide to fund a project.
Mhm.
so we
I would argue that the project down at the Chime Tower is a historic, that would fall under the select board.
Okay, good. I still would like Katie to work on it though, if that's all right.
So you just work on the first project, we'll work on the monument.
Okay, all right. And that's, but remember everyone, it's a week from Monday at noon, these have to be in.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of time. I'm happy to kind of, all right.
so I could work on the first project and then
We'll take care of
submit
it.
the application and then you guys can take over.
Good.
Okay,
And I only have one third one, and I don't know, Michael, if this needs funding, but I would really strongly like to see the removal of old rusty fencing that is on town property that serves no purpose. And if we need a $5,000 or $10,000 open space grant to do it, I would love to apply for it because, there's a lot of issues with everything from animals laying eggs to migration to, it's just as an impediment that we don't need. And you can see it down by the river in lots of places. And I would like on town property. I don't know if we need a budget to do it. I just know it's something that, fences is something I hate.
We can
Okay.
look at removing the fencing. I don't see where we need a budget line for it.
And what does looking at it mean? First of all, what did my colleagues think of the old rusty fences?
What fences are you talking about?
Well, we
Where
got
are they
to-
located, do they?
Down by the old ball field,
All depends if it's town or
it is all
private.
town.
But if it's town,
it's town, then
can't
we can-
highway do it?
We can. I've been talking about it for years and I want
Are
to,
you talking about town properties or just town right of way?
I'm talking about the area along the river that people walk by every day and it's got like half the fences are down and some of them were taken out and half of them are still up and it looks crappy and it's also bad for animals. That's what I'm talking about. Specifically along the river.
Where is this?
Literally behind the ball field, as you
Along
walk
the river.
behind Laurel Hill, half of it's up, half of it's down, and it's sort of, yeah. We did a good job taking some fences down, though. Right? The ball field just have a fence.
Walk back there and take a look at the fencing.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, but if you need $5,000, I'll write up a CPC grant.
Oh,
You
this
let
is
me
another
know.
thing on the
If there's anything,
CBC.
Pull it out
Yeah.
and we would get money for the return of the metal, if anything.
Yay.
Yeah, it's, this is another thing, the CPC is, when we first started this CPC, the state matched us 100%.
Yeah, I
And I
know.
believe the town raises about 200,000 a year. And I
More
believe
than
this
that,
year,
probably.
Mike, we're getting like 38,000 from the state.
It's higher.
Actually, the state DOR representative had stated to us 38,000. Then we got official notification from the actual trust, and because we are a 3% community, we get a higher percentage. So they matched 18%, and then they put extra on top of it. So we're actually going to receive 111,000.
Okay, but we're still not 100%. I mean, it's half of,
It's closer to about 40%.
yeah, just want to make people know that we are not getting the state funding like we used to. So
And I only have,
we do raise enough on our own. So we are good with it, but I just want people to know state funding is going down.
and I have one last little one. And that is like, and I'll give you an example of it. On the door of the chime tower right now, that we spent, what is it, $700,000 repairing and renovating. There's a little paper laminated sign explaining what the chime tower is. And you know what? Can we do like a CPC $500 or $1,000 sign plaque budget? So when things like that come up, we can just do a nice sign that we spend a fortune maintaining these monuments. And then we masking tape up a little white paper laminated sign. And it drives me like, a little bit crazy because I like things to be exactly right. And so I would like to also have permission to do a $500 or $1,000 sign budget. So when things like that come up, Michael's able to order a nice little plaque that explains the history of the chime tower. And we're not able to, just so that we have a little bit of budget for those sorts of things. I think that would be great.
So the only thing I'd bring up is whether or not we should just maybe put $1,000 in a little sign, but we couldn't do it through CPC. So when we put up signs like that anywhere in town, instead of throwing up a piece.
But it's historic property. Can we do it as historic?
No, if you're just gonna do it for that one building, I could get us like,
God bless.
nice metal ones that you could put up. There's, a couple different options that we can look at. But I'm just wondering if we should just have some money in a sign line.
I don't care how we do it.
But I'm not sure how, if you want to write one just for that building, but like two.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, how about, Michael, we'll decide if that's all right and how you want to fund it. Better signage. I don't mean signs like all over town, no signs full. I don't want to get in trouble here. I want a little plaque on the chime tower.
Yes. One other thing is, so I have the estimate to get us through the next 2 years of the engineering for dredging. We have
Okay.
$200,000 remaining that's available between the town and SBA money that was approved through the CPC. I'm going to need 50,000 more to get us through FY25 and fiscal year 26. Would the board?
Wait a second. Can you run that by us again?
I would need 50,000 more to get through FY25 and 26 of the dredging engineering. Would the board be okay with an application from the town requesting dredging?
What? Wait a second. We have $1.5 million that was donated to that project 10 years ago and has earned at least another, I don't know how much in interest because 10 years in investment. How much of that 50,000 is coming out of the money that the good people of Stockbridge, including mostly seasonal residents, donated that was directed to that project? Any percentage of that money?
If the board doesn't want to approve a dollar amount, I will request it from the SBA and go from there. So.
Well, but it's, once again, this is sort of a difficult, and I apologize to the chair. Can I ask?
Okay.
This is a difficult position because if we don't approve it and then the SBA doesn't approve it, we're going to miss the deadline. And I feel like I don't want to play hardball. What do you think we should do, Michael?
But being it's
Put
2
this in
years,
a
you gotta do
bind.
25,000 a year, or can you do the 50,000 for the 2 years?
So right now I have enough money to cover all of FY25, which is going to include the Indian. We're going to do a site assessment. We're doing the bedrock ledge, checking for ledging. We have some other DEP filings, and then we have to go in front of the Conservation Committee because we have a couple isolated areas of concern. So those things will all be happening in FY25. Then there's a continuation of the MEPA filings and the rest in FY26, which would then get us to the point that we can begin construction diagrams in FY27, with then the plan to go out in 28. So there's going to be multiple.
Okay, so the 50,000 is in a 1 year period.
50,000 will get me through FY25 and fiscal year 26.
Okay,
And
I don't.
I'm just saying,
You have to.
we spent $600,000-700,000 at least on CPC money. What?
Direct me on how you'd like me to proceed with this. I can request it from the SBA, and I can contact the president and discuss with her funding of it. And then depending on how you'd like me to proceed.
Can you talk with them and get an answer? And if it's the wrong answer, we can do the CPC by the 2nd?
If you authorize how you want to authorize me to handle this, we won't be able to move
Yes.
before that.
So
I know, but we have to do it. We can't, if you vote no and both vote no, we don't have that money, then we're,
The other
Okay.
timing is we can still withdraw the application prior to it going to the final vote of the CPC, which will be later. So what I will do is I will request the funding from the SBA. And if if the SBA isn't available, or you 50-50 split, or however you want me to approach, and then do you want me to approach a?
So you can put it through the 50,000 through the
CPC.
CPC. And then you got time to deal with, you could pull that at any time, correct? After the second? Can you pull your application?
Pull it before the board sets its meeting, so once they'll be establishing their meeting to discuss the projects for funding. So yeah, we'll have a couple weeks there where we could withdraw it if I don't put it.
Yes, I would recommend applying for it through CPC, and then if we can withdraw it, if they decide to do it, then withdraw. Because I don't want to hold up the project. I know what you're saying.
What I'm saying is,
What do you want to say?
what I think I think that nobody likes to talk about money. Not organizations, they've got some money, we got taxpayer money. This is not acrimonious. But what we need is on a project that could be $4 or $5 million, we need an overall roadmap of how it gets funded and when it gets funded and who pays for what. And this is just an example of kind of like, this is not, if you want to do 50 grand, it's not the end of the world, but CPC's got relatively limited money and we're going to have a whole lot more things coming into it than we're going to have, but it's not the end of the world. I would like to see sooner rather than later, though, some kind of proposal between the SBA and the town over how we envision this roadmap looking and at what stages of funding people expect from the town and from the SBA. It's the only fair thing to do for the voters and for the members who've donated the money to SBA.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So within,
No, and I-
fiscal year 26, we will have, we'll understand exactly where our permitting, the rest is, and we will also have preliminary cost estimates that would be applicable then. To go out now and get them while we're looking at, 3.5 years from now before the project, you're just taking a wild guess at a price.
I'm not talking about what the costs are, Michael. I'm talking about what the schedule of payment is between the two entities. I'm talking about what kind of like what's fair between CPC and a free cash or reserve fund, kind of allotment when we eventually get there, and what's fair with the SBA. It's just a question of kind of having a conversation around, we have several pots of money here, not all of which are municipal, and we're going to need to understand how it's going to be split up, whatever the costs are.
I mean, the other thing is I could not apply for CPC and just wait, and we could look at it as a free cash one or SBA, and maybe in the meantime, have a meeting with the SBA and the select. board
Okay.
to discuss this.
That's my preference.
Okay, because I do think the townspeople will want to know that they're paying half and,
Yeah.
we're paying half, like at least that it's equitable. Yeah.
All right, so I won't put in an application for CPC. I'll wait until either a free cash or from the SBA, and we'll schedule a meeting in the next month or so. Maybe at least by January, to meet with the SBA to discuss the funding of this project going forward. How's that?
Okay.
Need a vote on it?
I don't know.
No.
No,
Okay.
thanks.
Just checking.
Not on the agenda. EMS fire presentation and update.
Yeah, so we had this on the agenda for the last meeting, but it had run long. So I just wanted to update the board on the work that's been happening over the last 2 years. I know Chuck's very familiar with this work that's been going on, along with our fire chief, Vincent Garofoli. We've also had George Manley and of course Jim McDonald, who have put in a lot of work all along. Been meeting, as you know, it started with Lee. It then shifted over toward discussions with Stockbridge and Richmond, and now we're sort of honing in on what we think is a viable plan to move forward. I would say by January, we'll be presenting a recommendation to the select board, but I wanted to give you the update of where we are now. So I'm going to present the PowerPoint, the most recent one. Oops. All right. So we've been examining the combination, and we've really narrowed it down to what we think is the preferred model moving forward. This is the most recent.
Is that a flood event on that slide?
What's that?
I said, is that a flood event on that slide? I'm making a joke about your graphics. Sorry.
Yeah. I didn't I wasn't sure why you were saying that. Now I see it too. All right. Yeah. The idea is to combine fire EMS services, in order for us to be able to hire multiple fire EMS professionals who can be backed up by the volunteer, component. Looking at this, we're looking at, a 24/7 operation that would ensure emergency services are always available, providing primary protection and response to Stockbridge and West Stockbridge. We'd be sharing resources, which would allow the towns to share in the cost of personnel, equipment, facilities, lead to cost efficiencies and reduction and redundancy of vehicles and equipment. Increase professional support, with a larger combined team. We'll be able to have more professional support available, enhance quality of service, better training and development opportunities for the staff. This would include both professional paid staff and professional volunteers that we have, paid call. There would be a high initial cost. These are the cons of it, with operations between the two towns and upfront investment in staffing, infrastructure, and equipment.
A little louder, Michael.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, don't have my microphone. I'll raise my voice.
There you go.
The increased operational costs include salaries, benefits, maintenance, will be higher. Model, putting some pressure on the town budgets, because you're obviously talking a 24-hour operation to have two individuals that will be able to roll either an ambulance on a medical call or on a vehicle accident. They'd roll one of the engines and the ambulance, and then on a pure fire call would be operating one of the engines immediately to the scene. We looked at the capacity of both communities as far as their excess capacities within their levy limits. Both Stockbridge and West Stockbridge have strong excess capacity and strong financial setups. So both communities are in very good financial shape. The setup of it, and these are all just estimates based on the current costs associated. These are with benefits and everything included. What we are looking at is a chief with 2 deputy chiefs, and then 6 additional paid full-time employees. It's approximately a $1 million operation based on the fiscal year 25 costs for salaries and benefits.
Does that include the capital costs of the building being built?
No, I'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
The command structure of what we're proposing is that we'd have the chief with a deputy chief who would oversee the fire operation, and then a deputy chief who would oversee the EMS operation. We'd have a finance and oversight committee, which would be made up of, and these are just proposals from our side, but made up of the administrators from the two towns, the chairs of the select board, and the fire chief. That would meet quarterly to go over how the operation's going, make sure that we're transparent on how things are working within both the communities and any concerns that we may have.
Mike,
Yes.
can you go back there for a second?
Yep.
I would strongly prefer, for example, that the board designate its representative rather than make it the chair. In my case, for example, if I were chair next year and Chuck is on this board, I would much rather defer to Chuck as the chair than to be the chair of some working. Plus, there's a learning curve every year, and I'd much rather have consistent leadership coming from the board that could report back to us. So I'm not sure the chair of the select board, the designate of the select board, I like a lot better.
Right, select board designee. I'll
right.
replace that. That allows both communities to do what they want with it.
That's right.
Yes. The oversight board, as we just said, we'll change this to the select board designee, but they'd have quarterly meetings to go over financial reports, budget status, projected needs of the department, and a status report of operations, fire prevention, and training by the fire chief. We think this would provide us with a strong oversight of how this would operate. We looked at different methodologies of how we would fund it, and EQV per capita seems to be a very solid approach to it. This would mean West Stockbridge would pick up 40% of the cost, and Stockbridge would be responsible for 60% of the cost. It's based on a combination of the valuation of the community and the populations of the community.
Can we talk about this for a second? On EQV, are you talking about the full-time residential population?
So EQV.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's a property tax. That's a property values. Okay, never mind.
Putting
What?
it together creates your EQV per capita.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. So you're saying basically, I can't read that far. Sorry.
So you end up with a 40% cost pickup by West Stockbridge and a 60% by Stockbridge.
Based on current equalized values. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So based on that, just another graph, if you're looking at this, the roughly $1 million operation, 589 by Stockbridge, 387 by West Stockbridge. This would be for the chief and 8 EMT firefighters, 2 deputy chiefs would be in that. Locations. So how is the location determined and what are the capital costs that would be included? We worked with JB Consulting to analyze the proposed shared services between the two towns. Currently, West Stockbridge shares EMS services with the town of Richmond, and Stockbridge has 2 EMS shared agreements with the town, one with the town of Lenox and one with the town of Lee. Analyzing, JB Consulting used Leveram's Code 3 strategist software, which basically predicted how response times and the rest would work with the two towns. We looked at the Stockbridge Central Station and then the new station, if we were to locate one within the close to the 183-102 route in Stockbridge, which would allow rapid response to both communities. You can see that the response times using a green the best to red the worst. You can see where the current, where the existing station's response time is. And then you can see how benefiting with a location near the 183-102 corridor would improve drastically the response times throughout both communities. The default location and would be just, this is where the water treatment and sewer plant is, right on the 102 road, tucked up close to the end of the property toward Pine Woods. This is just, we picked this as a default because we own the property. We'd still be examining the exact location and see if there's any other options, but this is where we would default to if no other better option was to present. It's only within a minute of the 183-102 crossroad, which was identified as the optimal location. We examined other buildings and looked at these. Looking at Hadley, Mass, they were able to construct a building and for roughly 3.7 million at 5,300 square feet. We made some estimations and we came up with about 6,200 needed for what we would need, which would put us at about 5,270,000 for the building. We also looked at Cambridge Fire Department. This one was built in 2021 at 4 million, slightly different build. Now these are Morton buildings. These are pre-designed garage structures that are already pre-engineered with a pre-designed office building attached to it. And the other one was Williamsburg, Mass. Williamsburg, Mass did theirs at 5.3, and this is probably a little closer in the size. It's actually a little bigger. This is a combined fire and police station that was able to be built in 2023 for 5.3 million, and then through tax energy credits, the town cost was 4.1. So we've been examining these different looks. We figure that if we had to fund a full thing, roughly 5.3 million over 20 years, it's about 354,000. We are proposing that this cost of the building would be Stockbridge. This is because if anywhere down, and West Stockbridge is also looking to build a new building for their volunteer to store their equipment. This is where our equipment would be in Stockbridge. If ever the IMA wasn't to be continued, it didn't work out, this would be our building. I don't think we want to get into issues of reimbursement of costs and other stuff if we were to end it. If they were to use any part of the building other than the joint department, you know, we could look at leasing part of the building or something like that. I will get a little more into the finance of this at the end.
Michael?
Yes.
With your permission. You mentioned with the Williamsburg one, there was fire and police. Have there been any conversations around merging both fire and police as a cost-saving shared services agreement? Or is that, yeah, because if we're going to build a new building, if if the conversation is going to come up at some point, we might want to decide to bring it up before we actually decide to build a building, but just wondering.
So there is a large difference. So if we were to look at police, you got to remember one thing about police. Police do patrols. So they're not as locked in. That's why you can have police departments where the building itself is out of their downtowns and stuff because they patrol. Fire stations, because the equipment has to roll from the station itself, is vitally important, the location of a fire station. If we were to do something, we could do something either out of our town hall or out of their town hall as far as down the road if something like that was to come up, because you'd be looking at police patrolling the towns, not necessarily operating from the departments themselves. So
Yeah, but the cars rolling at a centralized location might be better than, downtown West Stockbridge or Stockbridge. That's all I'm saying. I didn't know if the conversation had gone on yet.
no, we haven't had any conversations about that. And, my preliminary thoughts on that is you'd probably have at least 2 patrol officers on and at least 1 if you were to do something like that, which would be patrolling West Stockbridge and 1 patrolling Stockbridge. So I can bring that up, see if there's any interest in that discussion, but also we've seen where if you try bringing too many variables in,
I'm just saying, if you look at a town like Beckett,
an issue in either town, and therefore I think this is the identified issue. So I'll bring it up, but
yeah, I just think if you look at Beckett or Otis or any of these large hill towns that have over 3-4 times the area that Stockbridge and West Stockbridge have, that I think that reimagining these shared services makes a lot of sense. Plus hiring is getting really hard for these guys anyway. Anyways, keep going.
one of the things we had to think about was how do we bridge the next 2 years, 2.5 years, actually. So the first part of it, you guys did at the last meeting, which was taking care of West Stockbridge as far as their fire chief by having Vince Garofoli appointed. So he'll serve out the remainder of fiscal year 25, just within the funds that we have available between the 2 towns. And then that gets us to the 2 years that we have to bridge, fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. For Stockbridge, we have a agreement with Lee and Lennox to provide emergency medical services until fiscal year 28. West Stockbridge will need to enter into an agreement with Richmond for them to provide EMS coverage until fiscal year 28. Fiscal year 26 and 27. We'd be looking at providing fire support during 26 and 27, providing a command structure for both departments. That would be a chief and a deputy chief, and then provide a daily coverage. We're looking at, and this isn't locked in stone, but we were talking if we could bring on 2 additional firefighters, we could fund up to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, to have at least 2 rolling in the initial call, and then that would allow us to cover. It's not in an optimal location, obviously, for West Stockbridge because it'll be coming out of our central station. But if you remember, we're going to have $100,000 reduced from our EMS agreement with Lee because of the money that the 2 towns received as part of that USDA funding, and that they're going to be lowering our assessment over the next 2 years. This would allow us to slide in 2 positions without impacting the budget itself. And West Stockbridge would provide 40% cost of the chief and deputy chief, who would be providing them immediate support for the operation of the departments. So, with the deputy chief and chief, we'd be paying $154,000. They'd be paying $101,000. This is all in with benefits, pay, everything, and that. So this would get us through the 2 bridge years. In addition, we would need to get an ambulance ordered. We did get an ambulance as part of our agreement with Lee. That ambulance is suitable as a backup vehicle, but not as a primary response vehicle. And if we're going to get one in time for the fiscal year 28, this is something we would have to have both towns put forward for this year.
So you're proposing, I'm sorry, Michael, you're proposing going from 2 employees to 4 employees, but covering 2 towns with those employees.
Yeah, providing coverage during the workday. Yep.
And we're
weekends for, yeah.
And we're currently covering 8 hours, 5 days a week.
The way we'd set it up is have them working 4 10-hour days. So it would allow.
So this basically gets another 3.
It gets us covering the entire 7-day a week.
Okay.
Right now, it's
Yeah,
Monday,
I just,
Friday, 8 hours.
West Stockbridge would have to come up with this year 180,000 toward the primary ambulance, and Stockbridge would have to come up with 270,000 at this 40-60% split.
And when you say this year, you mean fiscal year 26?
Yes, if we're gonna get the ambulance ordered in time for us to have this operation up and running for fiscal year 28, which at the time, if we don't have it up, we'd have to we're confident we can get it up and running by fiscal year 28. We would need to get the ambulance ordered now. This allows us to, because if we don't, we're gonna have to renegotiate agreements with Lee and Lennox, and currently we pay over 300,000 for ambulance coverage annually for those two towns. So this would allow us to get an ambulance ordered and get it in place for fiscal year 28. It's about a 2-year lead time on it. The cost for paid and unpaid components, capital cost debt. This is a look at the overall picture. So you can see where right now, this is what Stockbridge, this is specific to Stockbridge. So we're currently paying 620,000 plus 100, and Richmond's paying about 100, or sorry, this is West Stockbridge, So West Stockbridge is paying about 195,000 annually, and we're paying about 620,000 for our current operation. Now remember, slightly over 300,000 of that goes to Lennox and Lee for their EMS coverage. The rest is for Vinny and Scott, who are our full-time employees, plus the paid call component of our department, maintenance, everything else. As you can see, even with us boosting up our operations, the cost for the two towns doesn't significantly increase until fiscal year 28, maybe. What we are going to do is actively go after what's called the SAFER grant to get at least 5 for the additional 5 firefighter EMTs that we'd be looking to get. By taking a regional approach, you definitely get extra points toward the application. If we can do that, that would allow us to pay for the salaries and the benefits for 4 years for up to 5 employees. So that could be a huge savings, but we don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a national competitive grant. Years ago, Lanesboro got it. Chuck may know of a couple others, but it's not something we can guarantee. That's why I would say fiscal year 28, the 772 and the 447, we should be planning on. But if we can get a SAFER grant in between, it could really put us over the top. So as far as funding a new fire station would probably not, even if we began development of engineering and the rest in fiscal year 26, we're not looking at anything, and there wouldn't be any high cost of engineering or anything else, because if we go with a Morton building, now there is some discussion, and of whether or not we should be going after a stick-built building more to the design.
Why?
Well, you got some neighboring communities that do it. I know this was brought up by some of the firefighters as far as building a building out that's for the remaining years. I don't know. It's if you stick, then you're building it to your needs as a more traditional build.
But is it like twice as much money?
It does cost quite a bit more compared to
We'll discuss that.
Yeah, we'll further refine this, but if I'm gonna base it on if we were to go after a Morton building right now,
Definitely.
set aside roughly $1 million. This would be in order to pay for 3 years worth of payments on it, 29, 30, and 31, because even if we built it in 28, the debt payments would begin in 29. We have 3 years of payment of debt service, and then we have over 300,000 dropping off of our debt in fiscal year 2032. This would allow us to bring on this fire station while maintaining a level debt service as far as for the town. So as always, as I brought up to you guys, this is just me looking at the possibility of smoothing, which is shown right here. If we were to use roughly $1 million of free cash, set it aside for the debt payments, we can see that our debt payments from 26 through 32 would actually drop and then sort of stay level. So I think that it's something that would allow us to slide it in without having any large spike in our debt during those years. And these are all the sources that we've been using as far as analyzing where this
Michael,
information. So
on the debt that's dropping off, that's water tank and update. Is that debt that's charged to the town or to
to the town.
it's not water and sewer debt?
Nope, it was agreed at that time that those debts. would
Okay,
be
thank
paid.
you.
So that's just the overall, that's where we're at right now. We need to finalize a couple things and then make a recommendation from the Stockbridge committee to the Stockbridge Select Board. And right now I'd anticipate doing that in January. So if there's any questions or anything else, or you want me to go back to any particular slide or something, just let me know.
Ed,
I just have a quick question, pretty simple. You did some, financial resource. What is the average income, including benefits for these, firefighters slash EMTs?
I could definitely get you, I don't have it in the slide itself. I can get you that information, but it's a retirement, retirement costs, health insurance, everything based on the current FY25 costs for any Stockbridge employee. So
Is it over 50,000, you think?
it's
All
around
then it is.
it's around 40,000 for benefits.
Just
Per
related.
person. So
yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, like Jamie, I think that we all should remember that, that this is, the average age of Massachusetts is 39. We're up to 63 or 64 here in Stockbridge, having safe and, what?
we looked at the average age, and the average age right now is 61.1 in Stockbridge.
Okay, well, so I'm up by 2 years. I'll wait till 2026. The point I'm making is that we're over 22 years older than the state average, and focusing on good, solid EMS is really in the interest of a community that has an aging population. I don't see any way we don't do this.
Plus the volunteers
Yeah,
are winding down.
Oh, yeah, no,
I mean,
I know that.
it's not just that the young people don't have the time. It's what the state's making you do. There's classes. When I joined, here's your helmet, here's your coat, hop in a truck and you
Yeah,
go.
that's what I.
Now it's hundreds of hours of training you have to take, and family members don't have the time.
Yeah.
tell them more people to run the toy drive every holiday, I'm just saying.
So,
I was just relating
Yeah.
it to, having these service people fall under, the assisted living, the high incomes.
Yeah.
And I agree with what they have to be.
Yep.
Got to be competitive.
Michael, anything else?
Nope, that was it. Like I said, I'm anticipating to bring back to this board in January a final recommendation. So this was
All
just
right.
an update as to where we were.
Thank you. So municipal electric aggregation plan presentation and timeline, please.
Yeah,
We just
so
approve it?
We
What
have
is
the
it?
community electric aggregation plan approved by the state. So we are now able to move into purchasing our electricity for our residents. You can opt out if you want to, or you can stay in. So right now, let me walk you through the timeline.
Okay,
Let's see, where is it? This one. All right, can everybody see that?
yeah,
So where we've been on this, municipal aggregation, this is one I'm so glad to see because, as I've talked about before, I was the one that started the Berkshire County aggregation program with a couple other towns, and North Adams took the lead 9 years ago. At that time, Stockbridge chose not to join, so it's something that I would like to see us move toward joining with. So the timeline is in May 15, 2023. We declared our intent through a town meeting vote. We entered in our consultant agreement with Colonial Power. We did our public review and comment period and had our aggregation program submitted and approved September 14th of 2023. We had to submit it then to the DOER consultation, January 17th. Then our DPU filing, and there's all the dates there. And came back to us November 5th of 2024 that we're good to move forward soliciting pricing. So right now, we'd be able to go out to bid to lock us in probably in March for April of 2025. What I'm going to recommend is that, and we can finalize this over the next, we don't have to do it at this meeting, but my recommendation is that we lock in for 7 months. And then what we would do is in November, go out with the other 18 communities in Berkshire County, because with the aggregated load of Pittsfield, North Adams, Dalton, and now Great Barrington, Lenox, Lee, all these other communities, you end up with a larger base load, which gives you a better chance of getting better rates. All these would, we would go out to bid, we'd get bids in, we can either choose a supplier or reject all the bids, and then we would go from there. So what happens is that there's a notification period that people are informed that they'd be moving, if they're on National Grid Basic service, they'd be moving to this. They'd have 30 days if they wanted to opt out. Information will be sent to everybody that's on a third-party supplier. And there'd be some information meetings, any local outreach or anything else. Colonial Power Group would manage the opt-out process for us, and then they would manage the ongoing service. This works really well. They receive 1/100th of a cent on the aggregation, and that goes into the rate cost. So this will allow us to solidify our rate over anywhere from 3 to 5 years, locking in depending on how the rates look. If you remember, when our rate went to 33.90 something, all the towns that were in the aggregation were still at 9.99 cents. I don't like to say, and I remember when I was first pitching this around the county to multiple communities, I like to say what we're doing is we'd be able to supply stability and hopefully cost savings, but there's no guarantees. But what you are able to do is you really are able to provide stability in the rate. If you get a really good rate, it can lock it in for 5 years. You might have a summer or winter, because National Grid goes out every 6 months by law on a particular day. It has to happen, and they have to take the low bidder. And that's why we ended up with, on that day, everything had pretty much gone wrong in the state when it went to 33 something. And this would allow us to go out, bid the rates, get a good rate in. And, if you don't get a good rate, you lock in for a year, and then we go back out again and see where it is. If rates are low, then you lock in for multiple years and then set the town, and you try to provide that stability for multiple years. So I just wanted to be aware this is all moving forward. And what I would end up doing is on the day for the Stockbridge one, that's a little easier because that's just us signing up. On the day, if we join in with the Berkshire County Aggregate Group, we have 24 hours for all the communities to sign at one time. So usually what we do,
like the NFL draft,
administrators have been approved by their select boards to sign, and we have the signing date, and then we get the paperwork to everybody, get it signed, and get it back in. So, yeah.
Would you like a motion for us to approve?
Once again, there's no motion to approve at this
Okay.
point, because we've already, this was once again just an update, because it was just the good news that we've been approved. We're going to move forward with the next. The next would be me coming back to you. What I'd have is it's indicative pricing, which would be in a couple weeks before we go out to bid. Our consultant would give me rates that I'd bring to the select board and say, here's where indicative pricing points to. We're going to be roughly in this range, and then get the authorization from you to sign at that time, as long as we're close to that rate. It's never precisely that amount, but we have a good idea of where it is coming in, and then we go from there.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Great job.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Michael.
and good job.
Enjoy your Aye.
And this is for gas and oil? I'm joking, kidding.
Solar, solar.
Right.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
Motion adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.